Star Wars The Bad Batch Season 1 came out about a year ago and is created by Dave Filoni.
We do what we do. Strap in, kid.
I was actually hesitant to go back and redo this one, honestly, guys, because it wasn't that great of a show for me to begin with. I think the show is honestly just perfectly fine. But all that said, it's not a bad show. My opinion really hasn't changed upon this last rewatch. I did go ahead and power through it for you guys anyway. So for those of you who don't know, Star Wars The Bad Batch takes place right after Order 66 and follows a group of defective clones who actually have a choice in the matter on whether or not to join their brothers in the hunt for the Jedi or not. We also see the rise of the Empire along with this, and we get to see if these clones are going to join the Empire along with their brothers. The Bad Batch were introduced in the final season of Star Wars The Clone Wars, and I guess you could say this is basically a spin-off of that. Also, this is going to be fairly spoiler heavy, so if you guys don't want to know anything about season 1, if you haven't watched it yet, please tune out now. So the entirety of the Bad Batch is voiced by D. Bradley Baker. Right off the bat, I want to bring this up because D. Bradley Baker does do a fantastic job in this series voicing all of the Bad Batch. Along the way, they meet a young girl named Omega, who is voiced by Michelle Yang, and she provides awesome voice work for Omega. I think that a lot of her voice work is what makes me fall in love with this character throughout the series. And even though I do have problems with this show, the characters aren't one of them. I want to make that very clear that all these characters are extremely well developed. I mean, they are great characters. I love that each of the Bad Batch has their own individual personality. Hunter having skill in like hand-to-hand combat and just being a lot closer to a very basic clone. Wrecker just being the guy who wants to wreck things. Tech being the smart one. Crosshair being kind of the evil one, which is one of the cool storylines in here. And Echo, we all know Echo from the Clone Wars. I mean, there's not much to describe there. Now he's just effective. And Omega is just adorable in the show, by the way. That's where a lot of the heart of the show comes from, and I like the heart that is built with her. That is fantastic. It actually at times gets me a little bit choked up, to be honest with you. I'm not afraid to say it. There are some sweet moments in this show with Omega, and I like it. There are 4 people that share directing duties on this show: Saul Ruiz, Brad Rao, Nathaniel Villanueva, and Stuart Lee. I apologize if I butchered any of those. And I think they all do pretty consistent work throughout the series. There's not one episode that feels like it wasn't done by the other. I mean, they all just feel very consistent. One of the things I loved about the series right out the bat is seeing young Kanan Jarrus, which Freddie Prinze Jr. came back and voiced again. I love Kanan Jarrus as a character, so that was a great addition. Seeing what happened to Master Depa Billaba and what Kanan had to do in his early stages, it was actually really tragic, and I enjoyed that beginning. It was great to start right in the midst of Order 66. It's kind of become what the blip has to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, storytelling landmark for them to use time and time again. I loved the usage of Fennec Shand in here, considering we'd only seen her in The Mandalorian prior. It was so great to see her in this. A much younger Fennec Shand in this time period, being voiced here once again, by the way, as Ming-Na Wen, who does great voice work here. It keeps the character just feeling so consistent. Cad Bane is in the show as well, who's one of my favorite Star Wars bounty hunters. I love that he was incorporated here. Oh, and the young Hera episodes on Ryloth and things like that. That stuff is awesome as well. Obviously, Ryloth has become such a big part of the stories that Filoni tells within this universe. We get to see new worlds in the show, which I think are just such a benefit to it. All the animation looks beautiful. The environments feel very Star Wars, which is something else that I dig. I liked going to the planet of Baraka, considering that's a huge connection to the Jedi Fallen Order video game. That was awesome. Kevin Kiner's score is back. I love Kevin Kiner's score, both in the Clone Wars, Rebels, and this. I think that he just does a phenomenal job with that score. Keeps it very consistent with the Star Wars universe. He keeps themes that John Williams had and brings them back into it, which I love. Saw Gerrera makes an appearance in this show. He makes an appearance in a lot of projects, it seems like, but it was still great to see him at this age, in this stage of his life, kind of starting to come up and become the big extremist that he's going to be later. It was so great to see. I know a lot of you are thinking it sounds like I really love the show. Well, first of all, I don't love this show. I think it's a good show, and the problem that I have with it is honestly it's too long. The season season is 16 episodes long. It could have been cut shorter. We definitely did not need every episode of this season. There are some episodes that just felt repetitive, redundant, and pointless. As much as I love the plot line with Omega, as much as I think that added a lot of heart to the show, it's kind of repetitive of what we had just seen in Mandalorian with Din Djarin babysitting Grogu. Not to mention Obi-Wan Kenobi did it again with Obi-Wan kind of babysitting little Leia. The babysitting storyline is something that really needs to go away. It has serious pacing issues. The pacing is inconsistent. Sometimes it's paced way too slow, especially that's something that's animated and made for kids. It could be a lot quicker in its pacing, and I just didn't like the inconsistency there. I don't know if that's a problem with the directors or what, but something about it just kind of felt off a lot of the time. Sometimes it's like I'd rather have the show than not have it, but then other times it's like I feel like I could do without it, so it's kind of a mixed bag for me. I do want to give Dave Filoni admiration though for trying to tell new stories within the universe, and not everything has to be like the Clone Wars. It's kind of nice. And the show also has a very different tone than the Clone Wars, which it's a spin-off of, which I also admire quite a bit. I like the attempt to make this something kind of different, but then again it just kind of goes back to the well and kind of feels a lot of the same sometimes. As much as I love seeing Cad Bane, he was kind of thrown in there for fan service, I felt like. Look, I do think the show is setting up some pretty important things for later on, so that I'm gonna give it. By the time we get to the end there with the finale, it's just kind of fantastic because we get to see what happened to Kamino. Kamino blows up, which was actually really surprising to me that they just did that, but then on the same hand, it actually makes a lot of sense with things that go on in the Star Wars universe later on. All the stuff going on with the cloning is very interesting. Obviously, that somehow ties in with Mandalorian, I feel. Look, guys, season 2 of The Bad Batch starts tomorrow, so I did want to rewatch this, get my thoughts out there before it did. On some level, I'm glad I did rewatch it. I did like getting refreshed on things that I kind of forgotten about. On the same hand, this entire show, like I said, is not terrible. There are actually some fun moments in there, some moments of heart that I really enjoyed, and I really like these characters all in all. The conflict between Crosshair and the rest of the Bad Batch is so compelling to watch, but there's just a lot of things that just don't feel like they have a point in this show. I don't know, maybe Filoni will surprise us and bring it all back around in season 2. Who knows? I'm looking forward to seeing what he does. Hopefully it's a lot better than this season. All right, guys, if I had to grade this season, I would give it a might watch. Honestly, I don't think it feels necessary to the Star Wars universe, but you do have like little nuggets in there that you might want to know. And if you really want to go that hardcore and deep into it, then definitely watch the show for sure. And like I said, it has good characters in it without a doubt. Alright guys, but more importantly, what did you think of Star Wars The Bad Batch Season 1? Let me know in the comment section below. Was this one that you loved? Did you not love it? Why or why not? And before I get out of here, please give me a hand and hit that like button below, subscribe to the channel, leave some feedback in the comment section, share this with your friends, and hit that bell for notifications. Once again, I am Martino, and I will talk to you guys later.